This is the new reality of the Texas housing market. Post-pandemic demand has collapsed, leaving neighborhoods eerily empty. Dreams of owning a home here are turning into financial headaches as inventory piles up and prices tumble. In this video, we're counting down the top 10 Texas suburbs drowning in unsold homes, places where developers built too fast and now slash prices just to fill them. From Dallas's sprawling outskirts to Austin's overhyped communities, we'll reveal the cracks in these so-called dream neighborhoods. Stay tuned to see which suburb has become the poster child for the downturn and hear about a town north of Dallas where traffic is so bad, a quick grocery run feels like a lifetime. Subscribe for honest housing market insights, drop your stories in the comments, and hit like if you enjoy deep dives. Buckle up. It's time to tour the ghost towns of tomorrow. Coming in at number 10, Cypress. A few years back, you probably couldn't stop hearing about Cypress. It was hyped as the ideal spot, close enough to Houston for convenience, yet far enough out to enjoy that calm, suburban lifestyle. But these days, that sense of peace has been replaced by the non-stop noise of construction crews putting up homes that just aren't selling quickly enough. Take a drive along Highway 290, and it's not just traffic you're stuck in. You're actually watching an oversupply problem unfold right in front of you. Builders went all in during the pandemic boom, convinced that the steady stream of buyers, especially from places like California, would never dry up. Now, though, demand has slowed to a halt, and there are far more homes than there are buyers. Data from Redfin shows that the number of homes listed for sale in the Cypress area has jumped significantly, with inventory levels sitting well above the national average. When you step into a sales office these days, the urgency is hard to ignore. Builders are throwing around incentives, sometimes up to $40,000, like freebies at a parade, hoping to persuade anyone to commit and sign a contract. According to the Houston Association of Realtors, active listings in this part of the market have risen by nearly 30% compared to last year. That's not just a mild slowdown, it's a serious deep freeze. Then there's the issue of falling prices. People who bought at the height of the market in 2022 are now watching similar homes in their neighborhood get listed for $50,000 less than what they originally paid. It's a tough situation to witness, especially for recent buyers. Drive through some of these master-planned communities at night, and you'll notice how many homes sit completely dark. Sure, the neighborhoods boast impressive amenities, but those hefty HOA fees start to feel a lot less appealing when it seems like you're helping fund facilities that barely get used, like a pool in a neighborhood that feels half empty. On top of that, property taxes in these areas can be steep. In some of the newer municipal utility districts, rates can approach or even exceed 3%, which adds a significant financial burden. Essentially, you're paying a premium to live in what still feels like an ongoing construction site, all while your home's value may be slipping. On paper, Cypress still checks all the right boxes. But in reality, it can feel more like a place stuck in limbo, waiting for a housing boom that has already come and gone. Number 9. New Braunfels. Right in the middle of the fast-growing Austin-San Antonio corridor, New Braunfels used to have a totally different vibe. It was known as a charming little German town where people came to float the river, relax, and enjoy some good food. These days, though, it's starting to feel more like a massive stretch of unsold spec homes than a laid-back getaway. If you've driven along Interstate 35 through this area lately, you already understand part of the problem. The roads and infrastructure just haven't kept up with the explosive growth. What was supposed to be a simple commute can easily turn into a frustrating, drawn-out ordeal, with traffic barely moving and tempers running high. You might find yourself sitting in your truck, engine idling, watching the temperature gauge creep up, realizing that what should have been a quick drive has turned into a daily grind that eats up an hour or more. And when you look at the housing data, it's not exactly reassuring. According to Zillow, a large share of homes in New Braunfels are seeing price reductions, which is a clear sign that sellers are quickly losing their negotiating power. Reports from Reventure Consulting paint an even more concerning picture, showing that housing inventory in this corridor has surged dramatically, more than doubling in certain zip codes compared to just a couple of years ago. That kind of jump creates a serious oversupply issue. Builders are now stuck with completed homes that have been sitting on the market for over 100 days. To try and move them, they're offering major incentives, including buying down mortgage rates to levels that haven't been seen in quite some time. But beyond the numbers, there's also a noticeable shift in lifestyle. People used to move here for that easygoing river culture, but now, actually getting to the water on a weekend can feel like a challenge when it seems like half the state has the same idea. That small-town charm is slowly being overshadowed by rapid development and congestion. A recent study from the Texas Real Estate Research Center shows that while new building permits are finally starting to slow, there's still a huge backlog of homes already under construction. In other words, even more supply is about to hit a market that's already overwhelmed. Walk through some of these newer subdivisions on the outskirts, and the atmosphere can feel a bit unsettling. It's rows upon rows of rooftops and fences, with barely any mature trees or sense of character to break things up. At the end of the day, you're often paying prices that rival big cities, but the lifestyle is starting to feel more crowded and less appealing, and the market itself is beginning to push back. Number 8. Forney. They like to call Forney the city without limits, but if you decide to buy a home here right now, you may quickly discover that your patience definitely has one. Located just east of Dallas, Forney recently became a hotspot for buyers chasing affordability. For a while, it felt like a hidden gem. You could head out this way and snag a brand new brick home for a fraction of what you'd pay in places like Frisco. But there's a major downside, and it's not something you can ignore. The soil in this area has a reputation, and not a good one. It's made up of expansive clay that shifts constantly, almost unpredictably, causing issues that homeowners eventually have to deal with. If you drive through some of the slightly older neighborhoods, you might already notice foundation repair trucks sitting in driveways, which tells you everything you need to know. On top of that, the housing market in Forney is becoming heavily saturated. Data from Realtor.com shows that active listings have surged, giving buyers more options than they know what to do with, while sellers are left struggling to stand out. Builders are competing so aggressively that they're actually undercutting the resale market. If you're trying to sell a home that's only a couple of years old, you're up against brand new properties nearby that come with warranties and generous incentives, like $10,000 toward closing costs. That's a tough comparison to beat. Local housing reports suggest that inventory levels have pushed far beyond what's considered balanced, firmly shifting the market into buyer territory. Then there's the traffic situation, which is hard to overstate. Highway 80 has become a daily headache, with congestion that never really seems to let up. The area has expanded so quickly that the road infrastructure just can't keep pace, leaving residents stuck in long, frustrating commutes. A lot of families move here thinking they scored a great deal, only to realize they're spending a huge chunk of their day staring at brake lights. Schools are also feeling the strain. Overcrowding has become a serious concern, with portable classrooms no longer a temporary fix, but a permanent part of the setup. The Dallas Morning News has reported on how fast-growing suburbs like Forney are struggling to keep up with basic services, and it's starting to show. Meanwhile, property taxes in the area are on the higher side, largely due to new infrastructure bonds meant to support all this rapid growth. But those services are still stretched thin. In the end, Forney is a textbook example of what happens when a community expands too quickly. Now, with more homes sitting empty, buyers are starting to look elsewhere, toward places that offer more stability, both structurally and in terms of long-term livability. Number 7. Georgetown. At first glance, Georgetown looks like something straight off a postcard, with its charming historic square and classic Victorian-style buildings. But don't let that picture-perfect image fool you. The rapid suburban expansion spreading out from the center has started to run into serious limits. Not long ago, this was actually the fastest-growing city in the United States, at least according to the U.S. Census Bureau. Everyone wanted in. But when growth happens at that scale, there comes a point where demand just can't keep up, especially at today's prices. Right now, the northern suburbs of Austin are essentially ground zero for one of the most noticeable housing corrections in the country, and Georgetown is right in the middle of it. The data paints a pretty stark picture. Redfin reports that the median home price in Georgetown has dropped significantly compared to last year, largely because buyer demand has cooled off so quickly. What used to be intense bidding wars has now turned into quiet listings sitting without much interest. Zillow's numbers tell a similar story, showing that housing inventory has roughly tripled compared to the peak frenzy back in 2021. In some of the newer developments on the western edge of town, You'll find entire streets where builder signs have been sitting so long, they're starting to fade under the sun. And it's not just about homes sitting unsold. There are still thousands more in various stages of construction, waiting to hit an already crowded market. There's also a bit of a mismatch between expectations and reality when it comes to lifestyle. People move to Georgetown thinking they'll be close to the scenic hill country, but often end up in uniform subdivisions surrounded by rocky terrain and cedar trees, far removed from that charming downtown they had in mind. As for commuting into Austin, that's a challenge all on its own. Traffic along Interstate 35 can be so overwhelming that the distance feels far greater than it actually is. Local coverage from KXAN News has also pointed out growing frustrations among residents, particularly when it comes to water restrictions and strained infrastructure caused by the population boom. So now, you've got homeowners paying top-tier prices, but dealing with limitations like restricted water use and highways that are constantly congested. The excitement that once defined Georgetown has clearly faded, and the growing number of empty spec homes is hard to ignore. Builders are trying to adapt by offering incentives, things like flexible cash deals, complimentary upgrades, and even full appliance packages. But many buyers are holding back, waiting to see just how far prices might fall. Number 6. Celina. If you keep heading north on the Dallas North Tollway long enough, to the point where it feels like you might have crossed into Oklahoma by mistake, you'll eventually find yourself in Celina. This town has been heavily marketed as the next big destination along the so-called Golden Corridor, trying to ride the coattails of nearby Prosper's success. But as you pass by miles of open land, once filled with grazing cattle and now rapidly being converted into construction sites, you start to question whether the vision really matches reality. The promise was a high-end luxury lifestyle. What many buyers are actually getting, though, is a commute that can stretch 45 minutes or more just to reach basic amenities, and that's assuming traffic cooperates. Developers here went all in, pricing homes well into the $500,000 range, even though many of these neighborhoods are still surrounded by little more than dirt roads and open fields. Now, the market in Celina is starting to push back hard. Data from the North Texas Real Estate Information Systems shows that active listings have surged, creating a serious backlog of homes that are just sitting unsold in the Texas heat. Drive through some of these master-planned communities, and you'll see entire rows of finished spec homes that have remained vacant for months. Zillow data suggests that price reductions are no longer occasional. They've become expected. In some cases, sellers are cutting $50,000 or more just to attract attention and get potential buyers through the door. It's a tough situation, especially for families who purchased at the peak of the market in 2022. Many are now realizing their homes may be worth significantly less than what they still owe on their mortgages. Builders are clearly feeling the pressure, and it shows in the aggressive incentives they're offering. Deals like covering up to 3% of closing costs or significantly lowering interest rates are becoming more common as they try to move inventory. A report from the Dallas Business Journal pointed out that while new construction permits are finally slowing, the rate at which homes are actually being sold has dropped sharply. More buyers are starting to rethink whether paying daily tolls just to sit in traffic is really worth the upscale lifestyle being advertised. On top of everything else, property taxes in the area are particularly high, largely due to municipal utility districts funding all the new infrastructure. So in the end, you're paying a premium price to live in what still feels like an unfinished construction zone, where the number of unsold homes keeps climbing faster than anything else around it. Number 5. Manor. Head just east of Austin and you'll eventually roll into Manor, a place that perfectly captures what can happen when hype takes over common sense. If there's one town that really got swept up in the excitement surrounding Tesla's Gigafactory announcement, it's this one. The moment Elon Musk revealed those plans, investors rushed in, snapping up land as fast as they could, convinced they were getting in early on the next big boom. Builders wasted no time, throwing up rows of siding-heavy homes at a frantic pace, all under the assumption that waves of well-paid tech workers would soon be lining up to rent or buy. But that demand never quite materialized the way they expected, and now Manor is dealing with the aftermath. The ground itself doesn't help matters either. This area sits on blackland prairie clay, a type of soil known for expanding and cracking as it dries, which can cause real structural concerns over time. In a way, It mirrors what's happened financially here. Things looked solid at first, but cracks are starting to show. The downturn in Manor has been especially severe. Data analyzed by Reventure Consulting shows that home values in certain zip codes have dropped sharply, with double-digit declines from their peak prices. A lot of investors who bought properties to rent out are now in a tough spot, stuck with homes that aren't generating enough income to cover their costs. Many are trying to sell, even if it means taking a loss. According to the Austin Board of Realtors, inventory levels in the area have climbed to unusually high levels, leaving sellers with very little negotiating power. Drive along Highway 290, and you'll see what that looks like in real life. Sign after sign advertising move-in-ready homes, all competing for attention. There's a noticeable sense of urgency, almost desperation, hanging in the air. And then there's the infrastructure, or lack of it. Manor expanded so quickly that basic systems like roads and utilities have struggled to keep up. Reports from KXAN News have highlighted ongoing issues like water restrictions and constant traffic congestion. Despite being so close to Austin, you're often paying near big city prices for a place that still feels more industrial than livable, with many promised amenities lagging far behind schedule. Parks, shopping centers, and community features that looked great in brochures are, in many cases, still years away from becoming reality. Zillow data also shows that homes here are sitting on the market for over 90 days on average, which is a long time in real estate terms. The result is an almost eerie atmosphere in some neighborhoods. Entire streets filled with brand new houses, yet no curtains in the windows and no cars in the driveways. It's a clear reminder that just because something is built near a major project doesn't automatically make it a smart investment. Number 4. Little Elm. Make your way north of Dallas toward the edge of Lake Louisville, and you'll find yourself in Little Elm, a place that looks incredible on paper. The marketing paints a picture of laid-back lake living, where you can dig your toes into the sand and enjoy peaceful sunsets over the water. But day-to-day life here often tells a very different story. Instead of relaxing by the lake, you're far more likely to spend your time staring at the brake lights of a pickup truck stuck in traffic. One of the biggest challenges is the town's layout. Little Elm is somewhat boxed in geographically, with most residents relying on a single main bridge to get in and out. When rush hour hits, that bridge turns into a bottleneck that can test anyone's patience. It's the kind of traffic where you could easily listen to an entire podcast episode and barely move more than a few hundred feet. Morning commutes quickly turn into frustrating, drawn-out experiences that make you question your decision to live there. On the housing side, the market is clearly under strain. Data from the Collin County Association of Realtors shows that the number of available homes has surged, pushing conditions heavily in favor of buyers. But interestingly, many buyers are still holding back. Drive through the newer developments, especially along the northern stretches, and you'll see long rows of unsold builder inventory that just isn't moving. According to Redfin, homes are sitting on the market much longer than they used to, which can be a serious problem if you're trying to sell before making a move elsewhere. Builders are competing so aggressively that they've essentially undermined the resale market. It's hard for a homeowner to compete when a nearby builder is offering a brand new property complete with a warranty, discounted financing, and even extras like a free refrigerator. As a result, many current residents feel stuck. Selling often means taking a loss or bringing extra cash to closing, which makes moving up, or even moving out, much more difficult. Local coverage from WFAA News has also highlighted growing frustration with how densely the area is being developed. Homes are being packed onto smaller and smaller lots, leaving very little space between neighbors. You might feel like you're practically sharing walls, even in a detached house. Add in high property taxes and constant traffic congestion, and that peaceful lake life starts to feel out of reach. After a long commute, the idea of heading out on the water can feel more exhausting than relaxing. In the end, Little Elm is a clear example of what happens when rapid development goes too far, where the very qualities that once made the area appealing are gradually being crowded out. Number 3. Conroe. Head north from the woodlands, thinking you're leaving behind the dense suburban sprawl for something quieter, surrounded by tall pine trees and calm scenery. But instead of that peaceful escape, what you actually run into is a massive construction zone that seems to go on forever. Conroe used to be known as a laid-back timber town, but in recent years, it's turned into a prime example of what unchecked suburban growth can look like. Drive along Interstate 45 today, and it's more than just frustrating traffic. You're seeing firsthand what happens when large sections of forest are cleared out to make room for homes that many buyers can no longer afford. Where there were once trees, you'll now find long stretches of nearly identical houses, many with beige siding that already looks worn down under the constant humidity. For homeowners and investors, the financial situation is becoming increasingly difficult. Step into a sales office, and the sense of urgency is hard to miss. Builders are sitting on a backlog of inventory that isn't moving, forcing them to make steep price cuts just to stay competitive. In some cases, according to data from the Houston Association of Realtors, prices are being reduced by $30,000 almost overnight. Now imagine buying a home here just a year ago, only to see a neighbor purchase the exact same model for $50,000 less. That kind of drop puts you in negative equity almost immediately, before you've even had a chance to fully settle in. The rental market isn't offering much relief either. It's saturated with investor-owned properties that are struggling to find tenants, leaving many homes sitting vacant. Zillow data shows that a high percentage of listings in the area are undergoing price reductions, which is a strong indication that buyer demand has dropped off significantly. Then there's the issue of flooding. With so much land being developed and paved over, the natural ability of the soil to absorb rainwater has been reduced. A report from the Texas Tribune pointed out that development in Conroe is happening faster than the drainage infrastructure can keep up, which increases the risk during heavy storms. So now, on top of everything else, homeowners are dealing with the added stress of potential flooding whenever severe weather rolls in. At the same time, property taxes, especially those tied to municipal utility districts, remain high, even as neighborhoods sit partially empty, with more for sale signs than trees in some areas. All of it adds up to a place that, instead of feeling like a thriving community, can sometimes feel more like a temporary holding zone for investments that didn't quite work out. Number 2. Princeton. If you're daring enough to head east from McKinney, you'll eventually reach Princeton, a town that feels like a cautionary tale about the limits of drive until you qualify thinking. Getting here is a test in itself. You have to navigate Highway 380, which locals jokingly call the Highway of Death because of its constant traffic jams and high accident rate. You grip the wheel, weaving between construction trucks and aggressive drivers, just to arrive in a sprawling sea of starter homes that went up faster than tents at a carnival. Princeton's growth literally happened overnight, fueled by easy credit and cheap money. Now that the market has cooled, the aftermath is harsh. For sellers, the housing data is downright alarming. Drive through the newer neighborhoods, and it feels more like a ghost town than a community. Rows of completed homes sit empty, waiting for buyers. According to the North Texas Real Estate Information Systems, active listings have surged by triple digits compared to 2 years ago, creating a serious oversupply problem. Builders like LGI Homes and D.R. Horton are locked in fierce competition, offering deep incentives to try and move inventory. Banners advertise interest rates in the 5% range and closing cost packages exceeding $15,000. But even with those deals, the homes often remain unsold, baking under the Texas sun. Infrastructure is another huge challenge, arguably the worst on our list. Thousands of new rooftops are feeding into 2-lane farm roads that were never designed for such traffic. A report from the Dallas Morning News noted that development approvals have had to be paused at times just to give water and sewer systems a chance to catch up. Imagine spending $300,000 on a home and worrying whether the toilet will even flush because the city grew too fast. Reselling a home here is nearly impossible too, because you're competing against builders who can offer warranties and interest rate buydowns that you simply can't match. For many residents, life in Princeton means being trapped in a town with limited amenities, surrounded by empty spec homes, and praying that a new highway bypass gets built before traffic frustration drives them crazy. Number 1. Kyle. We've arrived at the epicenter of the Texas housing crash, the town that has become the ultimate symbol of buyer's remorse. Nestled just south of Austin, Kyle was the shining star of the pandemic housing boom. It was supposed to be the affordable, trendy alternative to city life, but rampant greed took over, and developers built at breakneck speed with little regard for sustainability. Now, the consequences are painfully clear. Exiting I-35, You're met with a seemingly endless sea of rooftops, but look closer at night and you'll notice an alarming number of them remain completely dark. The numbers coming out of Kyle are staggering. A deep analysis by Reventure Consulting, using Zillow data, shows that inventory in this zip code has skyrocketed over 400% since the height of the boom. This isn't just a market correction, it's a collapse. Whole streets have houses for sale every other lot, many sitting empty for months. Prices here have fallen faster than nearly anywhere else in Texas. Homeowners who purchased at the peak are now staring down losses of 20% or more on their equity, effectively paying a mortgage on a rapidly depreciating asset. Add to that the water issues. Kyle is infamous for water scarcity, and the city has been under strict restrictions while long-term supply concerns continue to grow. A KX News report highlighted how rapid population growth has pushed local utilities to the brink, leaving residents paying premium property taxes for a home where even basic resources are strained. Commuting to Austin compounds the misery. Traffic is brutal, turning what should be a short drive into a soul-crushing ordeal. Investors who bought rental properties are abandoning the market, dumping even more inventory into an already saturated area. It's the perfect storm of overdevelopment and economic reality, making Kyle the #1 Texas town where the American dream has clearly stalled. Looking at it all, the so-called Texas miracle starts to feel less miraculous when you're facing negative equity in a town with 2-hour commutes, sky-high property taxes, and rising interest rates. Endless land didn't translate into endless demand, and now these suburbs are full not just of nice houses, but of regret, and a lot of empty space. If you enjoyed this tour of the inventory apocalypse, hit the like button to support the channel, subscribe so you don't miss our next housing market deep dive, and share this with anyone thinking of moving to the Lone Star State. You could save them a fortune. Drive safe out there.